Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar series, Christmas in July. Today, in part one of our series, we're going to look at prepping your books for the holiday season. My name is Christina Del Villar, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Webgility, and I'll be your host today. I'd also like to introduce Chris Robinson. He is our onboarding manager, and he is also a gold certified ProAdvisor for QuickBooks Enterprise and for QuickBooks Online. His specialties are accounting and inventory management, so it's a great opportunity to hear from him on how to get everything ready for the holiday season. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being here. So I just want to talk about a little bit about our agenda for the next hour. We're going to go through a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll talk about, again, prepping your books for the holidays. We'll kind of focus on your Christmas past, present, and future, not necessarily in that order. And then we'll talk a little bit about how Webgility can help with that, and we'll open it up for questions and answers. Also, again, this is part one of a series, so I'll talk a little bit about some of the other webinars that we have coming up to help you prepare for your holiday selling season. In terms of housekeeping, everyone is set on mute. If you have a question, please feel free to submit them throughout the webinar. You can use the question panel, the box that's on probably on the right-hand side. If we don't get to your question, we'll try to follow up after the webinar, but we're going to try to get through as many of them as we possibly can. Also, the webinar is being recorded, so we will send that out to everybody who is on the line afterwards so that you guys have access to that and can share it with your colleagues. Great, so let's get started. Chris, so as you know, most small to mid-sized businesses, retail businesses, 40% of their revenue comes from this holiday season. And so it's really important for them to sort of take a look at what's going on with their books now. So can you, again, sort of talk about, why now and how they should start prepping for that?
Sure. I've noticed that sometimes companies can have a situation happen where they become a victim of their own success. Their business will be growing, they'll be getting a bunch of orders in, the holiday season will hit, they'll get a flood of orders. They may not have been keeping up their inventory, and all of a sudden they're selling things that they actually don't have in stock. This leads to them having issues fulfilling the orders in a timely fashion. The customers then leave a bad review on Amazon or eBay, which causes them to not show up very highly in the rankings, and all of a sudden their flood of orders stops. So it's very important that you're able to scale your business to meet the holiday demand. Otherwise, you can run into lots of issues.
Great, and we're going to get into a lot more detail about that. And sort of, Chris, to your point, basically, in order to get to this point, they need to build this foundation. So do you want to sort of talk about what this foundation might look like and how they should start?
Sure. One thing that is important to do if you haven't already done it is just to make sure to close out your books from the previous year. It's a pretty simple process that I'll go over briefly in a sec here. Also making sure to file your taxes. Throughout the year, you're collecting sales tax. That's a liability you owe to whatever your taxing agency is. So figuring out what that is by running a sales tax liability report in your accounting software, or if you're using a plugin like Avalara or something in your shopping cart, just run that report and make sure that you pay your agency correctly. So you can see here that we have the bottom end of a balance sheet, and near the bottom it has the net income. That's how your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement are connected. So the bottom line of your profit and loss is your net income. That moves into the equity portion of your balance sheet. That should automatically be happening through your accounting system by whatever you set your closing date to be for your year. And then what most of my clients do at the end of the year is just do a journal entry from net income into retained earnings, and that moves that amount out of net income so that each year can be renewed.
And can you talk, so that's basically just closing out the books, and that's going to help them prep so that they have all the information they need?
Correct.
Okay, great. So we're going to do a little bit of a poll right now. Basically, we want to understand when you start prepping for your holiday selling season. So we're going to open up the poll, and it's interesting because I talked to one of our customers last week, and I asked her, when do you start prepping for the holiday selling season? And she laughed at me and she said, I never stop. So that's definitely one option. But again, we just want to sort of get a feel for what you guys are doing out there right now. All right, so I think we'll go ahead and close the poll, and let's see what people are doing right now in terms of getting ready for the holiday season. So it looks like most people are starting 6 months or more ahead, which is great, and that's why we're having Christmas in July. Starting to look at that. Some of you, again, are always prepping, like one of our customers was saying. And interestingly enough, almost a third of you, or 25%, 27%, don't actually do anything special for prepping for the holiday season. So hopefully we'll go through a few more items here that will help you out and get you ready so that you can be successful this season. All right, let's take a look at Christmas present. So basically, I think a lot of people they might not necessarily understand their cash. They might understate it, they might overstate it. So Chris, talk a little bit about what people should be looking at in terms of where their finances stand today so that they can leverage that for the holiday season.
Sure. So the cash you have in your bank account isn't the only leverage that you have to help run your business for the holidays. There's some other things that you can do to get more resources. The first thing you can do is make sure that your receivables are in check. That's basically making sure that everyone who owes you money has paid you. I know sometimes it's easy to kind of lose track of what's going on, but now would be a good time to put a good plan in place to start collecting on all the accounts receivable that are outstanding. On the other side of that coin are your payables. Now is when you definitely should make sure that you're up to date on all your payments to your vendors that have extended you terms, such as Net 30. You will put yourself in the best position to negotiate with your vendors for the holiday season if you're fully paid up with them. And thinking about renegotiating your contract with your vendors now is a really good idea. Who knows? Maybe you can get them to extend it out to Net 45 or even Net 90. Possibly you could get them to ship you a bunch of goods and they'll restock the goods at the end of the holiday season that you don't sell, so you can make sure to have plenty on hand. Just renegotiating those relationships is very important at this time.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. I know that a lot of our customers do that. They have a good idea of what it is that they're going to need, and so they're able to get some good terms with their vendors. Again, it just helps them stretch out their cash a little bit more and helps them so that they can actually purchase more items and have a better sort of consistency in terms of what they're selling throughout the holiday season.
So here's just a sample aging summary for accounts payable. You can see that this particular person, Dropshipper USA, is their biggest vendor, and they owe them quite a bit of money. So closing that out, and when you say, hey, by the way, I just paid you a bunch of money, let's renegotiate terms for next year. Whatever your accounting system is, you'll have some sort of an aging summary for accounts payable. On the other side, your accounts receivable, you want to look through. Do you have some accounts that are outstanding? You can see this person, this Alton Brownie, they have a bunch of money they owe to the company. Who knows why it's been sitting there for so long, but it's time to get on it and figure out how to collect.
Especially if it's $169,000.
Yeah, you think you'd want to get that.
That's something you want to focus on. Excellent, thank you. In terms of Christmas past, it's critical to build your plan in terms of inventory, what you're going to sell, how you're going to market, all of that, potentially based on past information. So can you talk about some of the things people should be looking at from the past so that they're prepared for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I would recommend looking at the past 3 or 4 years of data. If you have it, you want to see what your most profitable item was from those years and also what your most popular item is. Now, these two things are not always the same. Sometimes your most popular item is not very profitable or even a loss leader. That just gets people to your website and hopefully will get them to buy other items that are actually profitable. So taking a look at that to see how you want to advertise and leverage things is important. A lot of times this can give you a chance to maybe reposition where those products are in your website to actually increase your total sales. Also, looking at the volume increase you have during your holiday season can let you know if you need to hire a seasonal worker to help fulfill those orders. The last thing you want, as we had mentioned earlier, is for orders to not be fulfilled in a prompt fashion.
Yeah, and that's interesting you should say that. We were at a show a couple of weeks ago and we're talking to a potential customer, and I was asking her, she was selling around 5,000 items every month around the holidays, and I was asking her, like, well, what's your most, what's the profit margin, what's your highest profiting item? And she mentioned this one item, and I said, oh, how do you know that? And she said, because it sells the most. And I said, oh, well, is it, is this a volume thing, or is it really are you really looking at the margin that you have on those items? And she was not looking at the margin. She was not looking at what was profitable. She literally was looking at which was selling the most. And in the end, that one was not the most profitable because it was a small item, and she was selling a lot of them. So in terms of packaging, shipping, all of the the back end that she was working on was taking up a considerable amount of time, and therefore it ended up that was not the best.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, especially in the holidays, end up becoming reactionary. So this is a good time to plan ahead and become proactive.
Excellent. So we're going to take another poll right now. I want to find out from you, what is your most profitable item? Do you know what it is? And again, in the case with the person I was speaking with, they didn't know what their most profitable item was. But again, it's important to take a look at that. So you're purchasing the right products and have the right inventory and the right amount of inventory in stock for the holiday season. So excellent. 70% of you do know what your most profitable item is. 8% do not know, and 21% say maybe, which probably means that no, they don't, and that is totally fine. But again, it's something to look at and look at the previous trends that you have from other seasons. So, Chris, what if this is their first holiday season? What are some of the things they could potentially think about and look at as they're prepping for that?
So with it being your first holiday season in a new business, it can be a little difficult to know how things are going to pan out. All you can really look at is the data that you have collected thus far. So knowing which ones are probably going to be your most profitable or your most high volume is what you're just going to have to look at and go off the historic trends that you have, but also just be prepared because it could become a wild ride.
Excellent. Perfect. So in terms of Christmas future, let's kind of summarize what we've talked about so far, what people should be looking at, and kind of what we've talked about so far.
Sure. So some action items that I hope people take away from this webinar today is to first of all get your books up to date. Make sure that you have made your closing entries. Make sure that you're up to date on paying your sales tax. Also that you have any data in there that may need to be input, any sales or bills or anything that are just kind of hanging out that you haven't put in. Do it now, because when holidays come, you're definitely not going to have time for it. The next thing to do is after you have that data in there is to really understand your financials, figure out those historic trends, figure out what your most profitable items are. Those will help you make different business decisions. Put a plan in place to collect your receivables to make sure you have as much money as possible to leverage with your vendors, pay those payables, figure out off that information you collected from your accounting software what kind of stock levels you need based off your reorder points and your lead times, and then negotiate with your vendors to get those items.
Yeah, and I think the negotiating, again, is really important, because if you have a good relationship with them, you've been paying them off as you're going along, even if you're just paying them off the $160,000 now that you owe them. But again, I think that it's important because the terms are critical. Like you're saying, you could go from 30 days to 45 days, which could really, it really just expends your cash. It expands the cash that you have, which is fantastic, especially this time of year. So that if things are selling well, you could potentially purchase more, more of the items that are selling. That sort of thing. I do know we've talked to a lot of people who they do purchase from other countries, so they have a long shipping time in terms of when they're going to get their products. So they actually start purchasing in June so that they get them in time for the holidays. And again, so just sort of understanding your cash, where you are now, what those net terms are is really, really critical. So Chris, we just wanted to talk a little bit about Webgility and how Webgility can help with some of these things, looking at the insights, understanding the data that they have, understanding their finances, reports, that sort of thing.
So yeah, my opinion on that is really getting that raw data into your company file is so important, so you can have all this information, but sitting there and manually doing the data entry can just be such a time suck. So using a product like ECC to bring that stuff in there for you automatically is just so important. It frees you up to focus on the things that are really important to your business, mainly marketing and sales and management, of course. Of course, ECC, it works. It works with the biggest shopping carts, with the biggest marketplaces, works with the most popular accounting systems. And especially if you're selling multi-channel, being able to have the correct inventory levels listed on each different sales channel, that's also hugely important to help prevent you from overselling.
Great. And I know in some of our other webinars, which I'll talk about in a second, we're going to talk about things like inventory, shipping. But what are some of the other things that people are going to need to focus on during this holiday season that Webgility ECC might be able to help them with?
Sure. So like I just mentioned, bringing in your sales orders into QuickBooks, making sure that your inventory is correct across all the different sales channels. ECC also has a shipping module, so since it's already in charge of bringing all that data in, it can help you streamline your process of printing out shipping labels. It can help with printing out packing slips in bulk so that your picking process is much faster. Basically, it fits in many ways to help you automate your accounting.
Great. And then also, if you want to talk a little bit about the different products that we have.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, ECC connects to the most popular accounting systems out there. The full Intuit QuickBooks suite, so whether you have QuickBooks Pro, Premier, Enterprise, Online, Point of Sale, whatever it is, ECC integrates there. Also, some people like to use Xero. It's a kind of a new upstart accounting system that their tagline is, "We do beautiful accounting." It's very streamlined, much easier to use. We connect with that. If you're kind of more upstream and you're a larger business and you're wanting to use NetSuite, we're also a NetSuite certified partner. So whether you are just starting out or you're doing 20 million in sales, we can definitely help you.
Great, excellent. So now we're going to open it up for questions. Again, we're focused mostly on prepping your books for the holiday season, but again, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and submit those on the question panel. And while we're waiting for a few of those to come in, just some of our other upcoming webinars. We have, again, a webinar that's talking about inventory. We have a webinar that will talk about adding channels so that you can grow your business. Again, a lot of people during the holiday seasons want to expand. They might already be multi-channel or they might not be, but regardless, of looking at other channels to add and grow. And then also, we're working with UPS. We'll be talking about streamlining shipping and fulfillment. So a couple of other webinars coming up to help you get through the holiday season. So great. So I have a couple of questions. Excuse me. So one question is, my QuickBooks is really behind from 2014. How do I, where do you start if you're behind from 2014?
So the good news is being behind from 2014 is really not that bad. I've seen people that are years and years behind. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do is find someone who can give you some help. It depends on your budget. Either you get someone to train you to do it and then you get in there and do the nitty-gritty, or if you have a little more money, you can just pay someone to do everything for you. The most difficult part is going to be the reconciliation process, and you got to start at the first month that you haven't reconciled and move your way forward. There's no easy or quick way of doing it. So just make sure you have all your information, that you have all your bank statements, that everything is entered into QuickBooks up until that point, and just go through it. Each company reconciles a little bit differently, so I'd recommend getting an experienced bookkeeper to at least show you how to do it at first, if not do it for you.
Okay, excellent. And the second part of that question was, how do I find a QuickBooks ProAdvisor to help me straighten this up?
Sure. So if you just basically Google QuickBooks ProAdvisor, you'll quickly get to Intuit's page where they have listings of ProAdvisors. The ones at the top are the ones with the most certifications and who are the most active, and as you scroll down, you get ones with less and less certifications. And it's important, not all ProAdvisors are created equal, so it's important to interview them just like you would an employee. Ask them what their specialties are. Ask them what experience they have in your industry. especially with e-commerce or inventory. A lot of people only work with service-based businesses, so they may not know much about how to handle inventory accounts like cost of goods sold.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then also part of it's a personality thing, right, Chris? I mean, you want somebody who you can work with, who you trust, who, you know, again, like you're saying, who knows your industry well. So again, I do think that interviewing some of these folks is a good way to figure out, you know, how that relationship will work out. So great. One person is asking about how do you figure out if it's worth hiring seasonal help? Like how do you know that you need it? How can you afford it? That sort of thing.
Sure. So what you're going to want to look at is the volume of sales that you have during the holidays. If that volume of sales is, you know, 100% more than what you have been doing, and you know that your current staff is pretty much maxed out on where you're at, well, you're going to probably want to hire at almost 100% more staff. So looking through your records to figure out what that spike is going to be is important. And people are always ready to fill that need during the holidays. It's pretty easy to get those seasonal workers, but you got to get them a little bit in advance so that you can train them, because these are going to be, you know, more entry-level type workers that you're hiring.
Right, they might not know your product, so you want to make sure you train them on that. So, and train them on which are the most profitable ones, so they can sell those. Excellent. So one question, this sort of ties into that. How in QuickBooks do you figure out what your most profitable, or Webgility, whichever, how do you figure out what your most profitable item is?
Sure. One of my favorite reports in QuickBooks is called the Item Profitability Report, but they put it in a really strange place. So if you go to your reporting menu, you'll see a subcategory called Jobs, Time, and Mileage, and that's where the Item Profitability Report hides. You can just select a date range, and it will show you how much you actually paid for each item during that date range and how much revenue you brought in for that date range. So you can easily just put in the holiday season from the previous couple of years and look at those.
Oh, very cool. Excellent. And then somebody's asking, they're a small business. They have under 300,000 in revenue. Is QuickBooks the best option? And what else should he potentially be looking at, and especially as he plans on growing the business? And again, we don't necessarily recommend. We're agnostic in terms of accounting software, but you know, if you want to give some advice on what to look for in an accounting package.
Yeah. So a couple things to think about is: do you sell bundled items on your shopping cart? If you do sell bundled items, then you're not going to be able to go with QuickBooks Online. If you just sell simple products, just, you know, a single T-shirt or a single widget that's not grouped together, it's not in a 5-pack or a 10-pack, or you don't sell like basically a gift basket of stuff, well, then you can probably get away with QuickBooks Online. It's much more streamlined, it's much more simple, it's a great way to start. If you do have those bundled products, though, you're going to need to use QuickBooks Premier. It's a desktop product, it's a little bit more robust, and it's able to handle those more kind of exotic item types like a group item or an assembly item.
Great, excellent. And we have some more questions, but if you have a question, please feel free to enter it in the questions panel. So William is asking, what are the benefits and challenges of the different Webgility ECC products?
So one of the biggest challenges with it is that before you can automate something, you have to very clearly understand how you would do it manually. Otherwise, you run into that kind of Mickey Mouse and Fantasia with the mop bucket thing situation. So really locking down your workflow processes and understanding what you really want is very important. The other thing that I see people run into is what I call a common naming convention that's using the same SKU for your products across all sales channels and in QuickBooks. Because for you, you may know that SKU number 1234 actually equals T-shirt, but no one else might know that, especially if you start hiring on holiday help. It can get confusing for someone to learn the language of your business. So if you have that common naming convention, it just makes things much easier. In ECC, you can always create mappings to teach the software what those different names mean across the different channels, but it's just always better to have that common naming convention.
And I'm kind of stuck on the image of Mickey Mouse right now, but if you could kind of, you talked about the workflows and understanding what those workflows are. Can you kind of talk about what that workflow might look like?
Sure. So figuring out one thing that's important to think about is At what point do you want your order to come into your accounting software? Do you want orders to be put in there as soon as an order comes in on your website? That may be very important to you if you keep low inventory levels, because you want your inventory to be as accurate as possible in your accounting software and to get pushed out to 2 different sales channels, so so you can make sure you don't oversell. Some people don't want their orders to come into their accounting software until they've actually been shipped for a couple different reasons. Sometimes orders change between when the order was placed and the order shipped. Sometimes something happens. Maybe you have to back order an item. It gets delayed. So for that reason, you may, instead of having it posted as soon as it's placed, you want to wait till it's shipped out, because then you know accurately what's actually going to happen. And those are business decisions that you have to make based off a couple different factors.
Great. So somebody's asking, they actually have a brick and mortar and they have an online, and they're trying to understand what the profitability is of items, and clearly that's going to be different because of overhead and costs for their brick and mortar, but what are some of the things they can consider in trying to sort of understand, again, overall what their most profitable items are, or per channel that they have?
Sure. So I like to call those brick and click businesses, and that type of a business offers special challenges, especially if you're used to running the brick and mortar and you're kind of new to e-commerce. At first, a lot of people think like, oh, great, this is going to be just like I get a whole bunch more customers into my brick and mortar store, but it's actually quite different. Specifically, trying to figure out what your most profitable item is online is not really that much different than what's the most profitable one in your brick and mortar store. Like I said, running that item profitability report. Otherwise, just figuring out what the profit margins are on each item, and also the turnaround time, how long it takes for you to sell out of an item after you've purchased it. Purchasing in larger amounts always reduce the costs because the shipping costs gets absorbed into them. A lot of times you can get price breaks from buying larger amounts.
Got it. And then somebody's asking, in terms of, so you understand what the profitability of your most profitable item or items are. How does that help you sort of plan and sell throughout the holiday season?
So kind of like I mentioned before, you may want to reorganize the real estate of your website so that the most profitable item of yours is highlighted. You might want to build that profitable item into a bundle with your popular item. So you say, hey, we know you want this item because it's the most popular one, but have you thought about purchasing this one as well? Or many people usually purchase these 2 items together, or we have a special deal if you purchase these 2 together. And just figuring out different ways to point people at your profitable item is important.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you. And then somebody's asking for a little clarification on our Webgility ECC desktop product versus the cloud product. So I don't know if you want to sort of talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So because cloud accounting softwares are so much different than desktop accounting softwares, we created a completely separate product to mirror the cloud accounting softwares. The interface is more streamlined and simple, just the way most of the cloud accounting softwares are also more streamlined and simple. The desktop product gets more granular. It has more configurations you can do to make it match the way you do your business better. So if you have a more complicated workflow, if you are wanting a higher level of detail, you may want to go with the desktop product. If you just want it to flow in and you just want it to get in there, you may want to go with the online product.
Got it. So is it sort of, if you're in an online accounting software like QuickBooks Online and Xero, you'd be using the cloud version of ECC, and if you're on a desktop version, you would most likely use.
Exactly.
Got it. Perfect. Excellent. I actually knew the answer to that. Somebody's asking what types of financial reports they should be looking at. And you mentioned one of the reports. I don't know if you want to mention the name of that one again.
Yeah, so like I said, the item profitability report, which lives in QuickBooks in the job, time, and mileage area, that one is very important. I kind of had shown earlier that you're going to want to look at your accounts payable aging summary as well as your accounts receivable aging summary to see what's outstanding or what may have slipped through the cracks. Something else that you might want to go through is look at your purchases by vendor summary, to look at your historical purchases. What have you been ordering throughout the year? How much of it? How quickly? That's something that can also be very important to you. And then, of course, always keeping a close eye on your profit and loss statement.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you. I think that is all the questions we have for today. Chris, do you have anything else you want to add? Again, we have a couple of other webinars coming up, so we'll talk a little bit more in depth about shipping, inventory, and the different channels that you could potentially be on, but I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
You know, just to close out, I'd like to give a shout out to all the small business owners out there. I think it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of ingenuity, and really you guys are what makes America great. I just have so much admiration for small business owners.
Excellent. Thank you. And everybody on the phone, good luck with your holiday season, and hopefully we'll see you on some of our other webinars. So I think we will conclude the webinar, and thank you very much for joining us today.